Welcome to the Bowne Report for March 27th, 2026. Outrage is exploding across the country as Senate Republicans, led by Majority Leader John Thune, appear to have adjourned for the scheduled 2-week Easter recess amid an ongoing partial government shutdown and without passing the Save America Act. Video circulating on social media shows Thune and other senators being escorted through the airport with their tails between their legs, bypassing regular TSA lines after quietly approving a midnight deal by voice vote that funds part of the Department of Homeland Security but excludes full operational support for ICE and CBP personnel. Their hubris is so massive, apparently they thought no one would notice.
How you feeling? Resolved?
What's that?
Are you thinking everything's resolved, working out well? The House going to do their job?
Well, we'll see. We made some temporary headway, but we got a lot of work to do still.
Representative Nancy Mace sharply criticized the move, posting, "The Senate left for vacation without passing the Save America Act. While they're relaxing at home, the integrity of American elections remains under threat." Like the rest of America. Representative Keith Self said denying paychecks and day-to-day funding for non-law enforcement personnel at CBP and ICE, calling it something that should make the blood of every American boil, and oh, it does. Many are demanding Thune's removal and questioning why the Senate is recessing while we are experiencing a full-blown national security crisis due to the war with Iran, while election integrity measures remain stalled more than 30 days into the DHS funding crisis. The backlash has intensified calls for the chamber to be recalled or for leadership changes before lawmakers return. And, of course, the ongoing oil situation adds to the cortisol levels spiking across the fruited plains, and it's getting uglier by the day. The escalating conflict in the Middle East, of course, triggered by joint U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iranian targets, including nuclear sites and leadership, has effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz for most commercial traffic. This narrow choke point between Iran and Oman normally carries about 20 million barrels per day of crude oil and petroleum products, representing roughly 20% of global oil consumption and about 25% of seaborne oil trade. The vast majority, around 80 to 84% of that flow, heads to Asian markets, particularly China, India, Japan, and South Korea. Since the war intensified in early March, tanker traffic has plummeted. Pre-conflict averages exceeded 100 to 150 vessel transits per day through the strait. Now it's down to a trickle, often just 5 to 13 ships daily, with many days seeing near zero oil tankers. Iran has declared sections closed, threatened to burn or attack unauthorized vessels, and carried out strikes on merchant ships, at least 21 confirmed attacks reported in the first couple of weeks. Major shipping companies suspended operations, war risk insurance became prohibitive or was canceled, and even some Iranian-linked vessels move only under special arrangements. A handful of ships reportedly pay hefty fees to pass, but U.S. and Israeli-affiliated traffic is largely excluded. The result? Gulf producers, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, etc., can't load tankers efficiently. Storage tanks on shore are filling rapidly, forcing production curtailments. Some reports indicate Gulf oil exports have dropped by around 60%. Stranded tankers dot the waters outside the strait, and force majeure declarations have rippled through energy contracts, including LNG from Qatar. Prices have responded sharply. Brent crude The global benchmark has surged past $100 per barrel, hitting levels around 105 to 107 in the recent sessions, with spikes as high as 120 in the early panic. WTI has followed suit, climbing into the high 90s to over $100 range. This marks the sharpest energy shock in decades, comparable in scale to the 1970s oil crisis, but driven by a single choke point disruption rather than a broad embargo. Individual countries like Japan are also drawing down reserves unilaterally. Australia is watching hundreds of petrol stations run dry amid surging fuel prices and disrupted imports. And it's not just down under. Across Asia, Europe, and beyond, nations are staring down natural gas shortages, rationing, and empty tanks, with LNG markets in turmoil and winter reserves scraping the bottom. Back in the old United States, the pain is hitting consumers directly at the pump, even though the U.S. is now a net oil exporter and produces enough domestically to meet its needs. Global pricing still rules the market, though. National average gasoline prices have jumped 25 to 32%, or about 80 to 90 cents per gallon since late February, reaching around $3.80 to $3.93 per gallon in mid to late March, with some areas pushing toward or past $4. I was just in California, and it was pushing $6. This is the kind of disruption we haven't seen since the 1970s energy shocks, amplified by today's tighter, just-in-time supply chains and heightened geopolitical tensions. A quick resolution of the conflict or successful reopening of the strait could ease pressures, but as of now, with attacks continuing and deadlines being issued and ignored, markets remain on edge. In other massive news, Silicon Valley now in a pressure cooker due to the latest jury trial in New Mexico. Here's Alex Jones with more on why it's our responsibility to protect our children from these trillionaire predators.
Prosecutors argued Meta knowingly put profits before the protection of children.
The conduct, as I said, was repeated again and again over an entire decade in a kid's life. That's forever. That it was done and made with knowledge that serious harm would result, and it did.
We believe the evidence has shown that Meta works incredibly hard to protect users, including teens.
In accordance with the civil penalty instruction and the instructions as a whole, how many willful violations did Meta commit by engaging in unfair or deceptive trade practice? The jury's answer is 37,500.
Big tech critics hail big tobacco moment and landmark social media verdict against Meta, the parent company of Facebook, and Google, intentionally being addictive and depressing and controlling. Yeah, and parents let their kids do that. I'm not defending big tech, but once you go down this slippery slope of, the way they did it, yeah, and you let your kids do that. Give me a break. What's sick is Trump doesn't have Elon Musk on his new big tech board. He's got the good guys off the board and has put his arch enemy, Zuckerberg, on the board and a bunch of other garbage. And people are like, oh, there you are, throwing Trump under the bus again. Zuckerberg got $400 million to create the databases of dead people and illegals and all that to steal the 2020. Okay, fine, I love Zuckerberg if Trump says so. Got Todd Blanche, the Democrat, run the DOJ. This ain't good. And I'm going to bet you about it. Meta must pay $375 million for violating New Mexico's law in child exploitation case.
Companies have been very effective in using something called Section 230, which is a law in this country that protects the companies who have social media from being liable for things that their users post on the site. What these two cases focused on is how the company manipulated the algorithm and developed products like Infinite Scroll in order to give kids an addictive product that would keep them on the site and keep them coming back. And what ended up happening is those kids would use those addictive products and then ultimately have suicidal thoughts or potentially body dysmorphia, or they'd be getting unsolicited messages from child predators. And the company is knowingly, according to documents revealed in both of these cases, understands that this is a problem that they have. And both juries found that they did not do enough to stop this. So again, a huge landmark here, not for the dollar figure, but for the significance of the rulings.
Government shouldn't be involved in the First Amendment. We shouldn't have internet. All over the world, they're bringing internet IDs. They are protecting kids. Hey, you put the parental controls on, or don't let your kids on devices. Control what you give your kids, folks. It's not the state's job. Because Zuckerberg's a predator preying on your children. Blackburn's Trump America AI Act repeals Section 230, expands AI liability, and mandates age verification. No, it's the AI Dictatorship Act that Trump tried to get passed before he got back in office. Republicans did, but he pushed. And then he signed an executive order on that makes big tech and AI above the law. Nobody can sue them. Congress can. Local legislatures can't challenge them. Citizens can't sue them. And then the executive branch can let AI do whatever it wants. It's Congress has created the AI Liability Protection Dictatorship Bill to enforce Trump's executive order that is wrong. That's the real headline. Overhyped. This is some good news. New polls suggest Americans are shunning AI as a breaking news source. They're rejecting it. They don't want it. Well, I don't just believe polls. Oh, I like the proof. The biggest video generating tool is no more. Is the AI bubble bursting? ChatGPT has shut down its AI system because not enough people are using it. It costs too much money, and it's a failure. People are sick of it. U.S. bans foreign-made consumer routers over cybersecurity concerns. I told people decades ago China has all these remote control kill chips and everything. Now it's all admitted. And then it just continues. Apple forces UK iPhone age checks in iOS 6.26.4. Yeah, the UK, Australia, they're all making Apple and other companies do age verifications. Hey, then adults have to do it. And now it's Internet ID that in the UN Gates-run standardization will be used for the cashless society, the social credit score, the grid. Some people are like, don't you want to not let kids look at porn? Yeah, if you're dumb enough to give your kid a phone that doesn't have parental controls, you should be thrown off a bridge.
It bears repeating. The crime stories that keep coming in. People killed simply for being an American or in the wrong place at the wrong time because the system keeps turning repeat offenders and psychotic non-citizens loose. In New York City, 83-year-old Air Force veteran and cancer survivor Richard Williams was waiting for a train at Lexington Avenue and 63rd Street station on March 8th when a man shoved another rider onto the tracks, then immediately shoved Williams right after him. Riders pulled both men back up before a train arrived, but Williams suffered severe head injuries. He fought for his life on a ventilator, and he died on March 17th. Suspect, yeah, you guessed it, 34-year-old Honduran national Bayron Posada Hernandez, an illegal immigrant who had been deported 4 times, now facing upgraded murder charges. Maybe they'll be upgraded to going to prison and being kicked the hell out of our country permanently, but I doubt it. He had at least 15 prior arrests on his record, including drug and domestic violence charges, and was living in a taxpayer-funded shelter in Brooklyn when he was arrested. This was a random, unprovoked attack. Apparently, these people just hate Americans. In Charlotte, North Carolina, 23-year-old Sophie Klippel was killed on March 12th when a car allegedly ran a stop sign and slammed into the Kia Soul she was riding in during a crash in the Plaza Midwood area. The other driver, 46-year-old Thomas Haynes, walked away from the scene. Haynes had been arrested more than 20 times with over 100 charges in his history, including recent warrants for breaking and entering and larceny. He had just been released on a $100,000 bond in another felony case. He now faces second-degree murder, felony hit-and-run resulting in death, and in New York, 31-year-old transgender illegal immigrant from Colombia, Nicole Alexandra Contreras Suarez, pleaded guilty to second-degree rape for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old boy inside a bodega bathroom in East Harlem last year. A Manhattan judge promised a 6-month sentence, which the defendant has already served via time served, meaning, that's right, 6 months for an illegal immigrant raping a child in a bodega in East Harlem, meaning release at sentencing on April 27th, unless federal immigration authorities intervene. And with our ICE being defunded, this could pose a problem. Victims' rights groups and even former prosecutors call the plea deal extraordinarily lenient. You think? These aren't isolated tragedies. They show the same pattern over and over. Repeat offenders and non-citizens moving through the system with minimal consequences while the rest of us get the shaft. The system keeps failing the same way. Americans see the results in headlines that repeat week after week. Public safety demands better accountability, not more excuses. It's becoming mind-numbingly obvious that something is seriously broken.
We've got the 50s, the 25s, the 10s, 5s, 1s. If you add them all up, you get to an ounce of gold. Now, this is also 1 troy ounce of 24 karat gold. It's an American gold buffalo. Very cool coin here. If you wanted to spend gold, to use gold as a currency, which would be easier, this gold coin or all of these gold backs? I think it's pretty easy to see the gold backs win in a barter situation. I can break them down way more times than I can this gold coin.
Folks, while the fiat Ponzi scheme keeps printing us into oblivion and the banks play games with your future, there's a better way to protect what you've earned. Goldbacks. Beautiful, spendable, gold-backed currency you can actually hold in your hand. Real gold, fractionally backed, legal tender in multiple states, and immune to the digital reset they're rushing us toward. Whether the grid goes dark, the banks freeze, or the Great Reset crowd flips the switch, goldbacks give you real money outside their control system. Head over to goldbacks.com right now, stack some freedom, and take back your financial sovereignty. Don't wait for the next crash. Get yours today at goldbacks.com. It's completely affordable. And now, as it bears repeating, the fraud update tonight lays bare a pattern that's been draining American taxpayers for years. Under the Biden administration and beyond, it's not random mistakes or bureaucratic slip-ups. It's systematic, coordinated, and tied directly to keeping power in the right hands while the rest of us foot the bill while we still can. In a breaking development out of Washington, the House Ethics Subcommittee has determined that Democratic Congresswoman Sheila Trefilis McCormick of Florida committed wrongdoing in 25 of 27 allegations leveled against her.
It appears on page 6 of the PowerPoint that in 2021 and 2022, Ms. McCormick received $6.7 million in compensation. Is that what I understand? That the previous year she received $86,000, and the following 2 years she received $6.7 million?
That's correct.
And in addition to that, there was an additional $600,000 that went into a LLC known as the EC firm.
Yes, which she owned 50%
and
of.
Ms. McCormick owned half of those funds. And then from those different accounts, from her personal money that she received of the $2.3 million, from the SMC consultant, and then from the EC firm, much of that money then flowed into her campaign.
Correct.
With reports indicating some of the money was used for personal purchases, including a big old diamond ring and a car. Critics are calling for her immediate expulsion from Congress, followed by criminal prosecution and imprisonment. as questions mount over accountability for elected officials and ongoing scrutiny of public fund misuse. In a stunning case of alleged public corruption, a former Los Angeles Unified School District staffer has been charged in what prosecutors call one of the largest money laundering schemes in the district's history, siphoning $22 million in taxpayer-funded contracts through the kickbacks to a tech vendor. This latest scandal comes as California's education system faces mounting scrutiny over widespread fraud. A massive charter school operation stole tens of millions in K-12 funds by enrolling phantom students and funneling money to private companies, with $25 million recently recovered for San Diego students. A Sacramento area charter improperly received over $180 million in ineligible funding, and ghost student scams continue to drain millions in community college financial aid. Authorities are probing the full scope amid broader concerns, including FBI activity around LAUSD leadership and questionable international diploma programs, leaving parents and taxpayers demanding accountability as billions in education dollars vanish into alleged waste, abuse, and outright theft across the state of California. In Minnesota, state officials briefly turned on tracking for welfare and benefit payments being wired overseas, your money being sent to other countries through fraud. In just 2 weeks, they saw large sums flowing to foreign IP addresses, computers outside the United States. Then Democrats in charge shut the tracking off. The money kept flying out of Minneapolis Airport, used to buy resorts in Kenya, apartment buildings in Nairobi, properties in Turkey, luxury homes and luxury cars. Reports put the figure at somewhere around $790 million in American tax dollars routed overseas through these schemes. Every time auditors or legislators push, another fraud scandal just pops up to the surface in Minnesota. A Somali-linked daycare operation was shut down for fraud, the Leering Center, only to reopen under a new name weeks later and pull in another $2.4 million in taxpayer funding. Regulators looked the other way. Similar clusters of fake or inflated daycares have popped up elsewhere. Boston alone had reports of 4,000 registered in a 20-mile radius, many tied to condos and homes with no real children being served. Nationwide, one analyst showed 124 health insurance policies linked to a single Social Security number, and over 59,000 dead people still drawing active Obamacare subsidies funneled to insurance companies. 59,000. Obamacare itself funneled billions with little oversight. The Biden White House reportedly ordered agencies not to pursue or enforce many fraud allegations across programs. Billions in green energy and clean energy grants were rushed out in the final weeks of Biden's presidency, or whatever you want to call that. $93 billion in roughly 76 days, including a $231 million grant for a Utah nuclear project where $50 million was transferred before the project was canceled with no repayment required. A $2 billion green energy allocation to Stacey Abrams' group continues to raise eyebrows.
Hey guys, did you see where that $2 billion of that money for Stacey Abrams went down in Georgia? Let me show you this. It went for refrigerators in an eco-friendly 67 people in DeSoto, Georgia. 67 people, $2 billion. What is that, 26 million each? Did they get that? Where did it go? Watch this.
In 2023 and 2024, I led a program called Vitalizing DeSoto. We worked in a tiny town in South Georgia to demonstrate that by replacing energy inefficient appliances with efficient appliances, you can lower your costs. And in fact, we accomplished that. For 75% of the community, they got appliances that are low.
Clean energy projects, infrastructure, and benefit programs became pipelines. Then there's the international angle. Oh man, U.S. intelligence intercepted communication showing the Ukrainian government discussing plans to route hundreds of millions in taxpayer dollars earmarked for clean energy or environmental projects through USAID and other channels, with roughly 90% allegedly funneled back to the DNC in Biden's 2024 campaign. The plot was discussed under the Biden administration, yet internal investigations were reportedly minimal. Ukraine had been a favored destination for repeated large aid packages with very little accountability. Similar patterns of money leaving the United States and circling back have been alleged in other foreign aid streams. Voter-related irregularities tie in too. In Minnesota, automatic voter registration tied to a driver's license issued to non-citizens triggered a federal grand jury subpoena to the Secretary of State's office to examine non-citizen registrations. D.C. showed 674,000 registered voters against 502,000 voting-age citizens. Discrepancies like this appear in multiple states.
Look at the outline counts where it's red. Don't change those numbers, right? Because then it'll flip that county that's always been red to blue.
Which
right?
will raise the flag.
Which will raise that flag.
Okay.
If you come here to the city where it's already 1.5 million voters, and then you just increase the numbers of your already places that you want. So you want to inflate the numbers that you already have versus trying to go to a red area and inflate those numbers, because that would just obviously look wild, you know?
So you need to start doing them 4 years in advance.
Yeah, you're trying to steal an election. Yeah, because you got to get a lot.
Dude, it makes sense, because after 2016,
you got to pay a lot. You got to pay a lot of people to get in the pockets. You know, a lot of people, people that you got to get a position, you got to get, everybody got to get a piece somewhere. Everybody got to get paid. Canvassers, ballot counters, people who run the drop boxes, election officials. We got all of that on somebody's payroll.
These aren't isolated incidents. They connect through NGOs, benefit programs, green initiatives, foreign aid, and tax oversight that funneled public money, your money, into political ecosystems while ordinary Americans saw higher costs. While you work 106 work days of the year for free, Americans saw higher costs, depleted reserves, and eroding trust. Losses run into the hundreds of millions and billions per scheme, adding up fast, contributing to the broader insolvency pressures where the country's debt and obligations keep climbing with little restraint. The country has been declared insolvent in practical terms by the scale of these outflows versus revenues and future liabilities. Strategic reserves have been tapped, programs have been gamed, and money moved with minimal tracking or recovery. We've reached the breaking point. This is what straight talk looks like. Taxpayers worked for that money. It was taken under the promise it would serve citizens. Instead, large portions appear to have been cycled through schemes that enriched connected players, funded campaigns, or simply vanished overseas. No full accounting, few repayments, even fewer consequences so far. The pattern is clear. The cost is real. Americans deserve every dollar tracked and returned, every scheme exposed, and accountability that matches the scale of this theft that is breaking our economic backbone. And more of what bears repeating. Several bright meteors and fireballs have continued to light up the skies across the United States through March 2026. As I reported on the show earlier this week. March 24th added fireballs over Michigan with 111 reports, plus events in Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, and into Ontario around 9:31 exactly Eastern Standard Time on March the 24th, and they just keep on coming. On March 26th and 27th, the reports continued. On March 26th, multiple events were logged, including one with 38 reports spanning Kentucky to Maryland, and another with 30 reports from Maryland and Michigan. Scattered additional sightings came in across the eastern and midwestern states. On March 27th, in the early morning, there were reports that included a series of brief bright streaks documented in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and nearby areas, with individual witnesses describing durations of 1.5 to 3.5 seconds at varying brightness levels. Witnesses are coming out from California to Nevada, Arizona, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Texas, Pennsylvania, and other states that have described green-tinged streaks, bright flashes, loud booms, and in some cases, house-shaking effects. The cluster of large, bright fireballs, many unrelated to each other and coming from different directions, has stood out sharply from normal background rates. Not every sighting fits the classic meteor profile. A few reports describe objects with unusually long durations, steady glows without the typical rapid disintegration, or paths and speeds that raised questions among skywatchers and even some analysts. While most have been confirmed as atmospheric entries, the irregularity in volume and the handful of outliers that don't behave exactly like standard meteoroids have prompted extra scrutiny from the American Meteor Society and NASA as well. And it bears repeating. Finally, a troubling update on the missing scientists and defense-linked personnel, especially around New Mexico. Melissa Casillas, a 53-year-old administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, vanished on June 26, 2025. She dropped her husband, also a lab superintendent, off at work that morning, then was last seen walking eastbound near Talpa, New Mexico, miles from home. She had forgotten her security badge earlier, but was observed passing through lab security on video. Her purse, keys, and multiple cell phones were later found at home. Factory reset to wipe data. No wallet, and she left without them. Family reported muddy boots, blood in the bedroom in some accounts, and abandoned clothes near the roadside. Family acquaintance saw her walking briskly with a backpack, and a blue Dodge truck was reportedly following her around at the time. New Mexico State Police have conducted extensive searches with no breakthroughs months later. She remains missing. Of course, this disappearance is related to earlier information I relayed on the show earlier this week, but I did want to add that Caltech astrophysicist Carl Grillmeier, 67, whose work involved infrared processing and analysis with applications in telescopes like the Hubble and Spitzer technologies with dual use potential in missile warning and satellite systems, work that would have been an authoritative source on the nature of these current fireball mysteries. He was fatally shot on his porch in Llano, California in mid-February in 2026. He was also studying soil on other planets. A suspect was arrested and charged with murder, carjacking, and burglary in connection with the incident, but carjacking in the middle of nowhere seems very unlikely. Also, I may have missed Nuno Loureiro, 47, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center and a leading theoretical plasma physicist with prior ties to Los Alamos. As a distinguished scholar, he was shot multiple times at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. You may remember back in December of 2025. He died the next day from his wounds. The shooting occurred after someone rang the doorbell. His young daughter witnessed the elements of the event. A suspect later died by suicide. Very odd. His research, Loureiro's research, focused on fusion energy breakthroughs, turbulence, solar phenomena, and plasma behavior. It was work with major implications for energy and national security applications. The Los Alamos lab has stated it's cooperating where relevant information leads. The real question is, if these scientists are missing, what else is missing? And in fact, that may be the reason for their disappearances. Dead whistleblowers tell no tales. That's the picture on these cases tonight. Questions keep piling up when people guarding or advancing some of the country's most critical scientific and defense capabilities suddenly vanish or turn up dead during the beginnings of a possible world war. We'll keep watching for any developments or official updates right here at the Bowne Report. Please subscribe to the Bowne Report on Substack and or engage with me on X at Newsbound. John Bowne reporting.